Good morning. Oh my gosh. Okay. So yes, I'm here to talk to you about record keeping. I'm kind of reiterating what Kathleen talked about, how important record keeping is for your purposes, for our purposes, and as she emphasized, for the public trust. Not only is it part of your statutory requirements, it can help you ensure that you're following all necessary steps for each notarization. It helps the individual who's getting the notarization know that you're following all necessary steps, and it's helpful for requests down the line, whether that's a year from now, a couple of months from now, you have that record. So to start off, we will be talking about record requests, record keeping specific to Texas. Different states have different rules, and the notary books that y'all get may have different boxes and different requirements. It's up to you, not the notary book, to make sure that you have what you need for each one. And that involves leaving boxes blank, adding information in. Again, it's your responsibility to make sure you're recording what's necessary and not recording what isn't allowed. It's also worth noting that you're required to maintain the record books for either the later of the term of your commission or for 3 years following the date of notarization. It can be a best practice to maintain them indefinitely, just in case something comes up 5 or 6 years down the line, but of course that's up to you, and they can be stored in paper or electronic format. So we'll start with the wonderful statute in Texas, 406. Hope you've all given that a good read. 406.014 does lay out the specific requirements for each notarization. So that talks about, the date of the document being notarized, the date the notarization is taking place, the name of the individual who's seeking the notarization, and the mailing address of the individual seeking the notarization. And again, that's the update that Sarah and Robert were talking about. Continuing on, there are some options based on how the individual is being identified. That can be someone who is personally known to the notary. Again, that kind of long-term, you're very sure about who that individual is. If they provide that government-issued ID or passport, or if they've been introduced by someone else, providing that chain and that link to verifying who that individual is. We'll talk more about the type of information that you can't record regarding ID, but as Kathleen mentioned, the numbers are really the important thing to avoid that would tie that specific individual to that ID. And again, if the individual who is introducing the signer to you, their name and mailing address also has to be noted. And then some more options depending on what you're doing and the document being notarized. If it's proved by a witness, you need to have the mailing address of the witness, their name, that they're personally known to you, and if not, the person who did the introduction and their name and mailing address. If there's a grant involved, the name and mailing address of the grantee, specifics regarding land being conveyed, and then of course a brief description of the instrument. So obviously a lot of information, and maybe some things that you weren't expecting that weren't included, like the signature, but important to include all of it. Just as important as what you are recording is what you're not recording. And the main point for this is confidential information. Again, this can include the driver's license number, a bank account number, the social security number, biometric information, as well as email addresses. And you may be thinking, what biometric information am I recording? But fingerprints, you see that sometimes. Sometimes documents may require fingerprints, but you're not supposed to be putting a fingerprint in your record book. And so there's more information, the sites for the Business and Commerce Code, regarding how that's confidential and what the penalties can be if you provide that to someone. So again, you can record what was provided, the passport, a Texas driver's license, an Oklahoma driver's license, whatever it is, just not that specific number. So then talking about the aspects of the record books that are public information. This is part of the public documentation. Individuals have access and have rights to view what's in your record book. This is why it's important to make sure you're recording things, recording all of the steps that you're taking, and notating that appropriately. So if someone requests that information and pays the associated fees, or if you agree to waive those fees, then you do have to provide copies of those records. If you've already recorded confidential information and you didn't realize that was happening, you still need to provide it. You just need to make sure you're redacting that appropriately. So this is just kind of an example. This is, kind of a version of any of the notary record books that you might see available. This isn't really the A+ gold standard version. There's more information that would be required, but this is kind of illustrative for our purposes. I leave the conference today, I get an email from someone or a written letter saying, I would like a copy of your notarizations for July 1st, 2017. So I take out my record book or I pull it up on my computer. I see that I only have this one page of records, so I can tell them, if you want certified copies, that would be $6 for the certificate, and then 50 cents for each page of the records. They agree to that, they pay me the fees, and then I'm required to provide those to the requester. So I can be reviewing this, I'll see the description of the terms, and that there are a couple issues. So at least on July 1st, I was still recording some confidential information. In the third row, I did include a passport number for Miss Beth March, and on the fourth row, I included a fingerprint for Miss Barry, which I will have to then redact. Some things I didn't mention before, when it talks about the fees, that's 406.024 in the government code. The law does require that you record in your record book each notarization, except if you're a notary administering an oath under the Code of Criminal Procedure, or you're a court clerk notarizing instruments for the court. So except for those small items, they have to go in the record book, even if it's for a friend or a family member, you're just doing it real quick for a coworker, it has to be recorded.